Well, one of our winter projects is to prune our grapevines, and while it's a little early to do that yet, we usually like to get through the worst part of the winter, we usually think about pruning grapevines in February and the early part of March. Now, there's an added bonus to pruning your grapevines and all of those extra cuttings, because you know most of this will prune away. You can start new grapevines from some of those extra prunings that you have. So, we're going to show you now so that you'll be ready in the spring to go ahead and start some new grapevines if you want to expand your vineyard or if you want to give some grapes to your friends. The first thing that you want to do is you want to find some healthy cuttings, and the other thing that you'll want to do when you start this is be sure to find the vines that you're going to want to leave on here for next year's crop. So we don't want to prune those off just to make cuttings, but there's a lot of extra vine, and you can see clear out here. We know we're not going to need any of this. Now, I want to show you what you're going to look for when you are looking for healthy vine, and you can see pretty easily right here. I have a healthy vine, and then I have a vine that's dead. Now this one, you can see here that it's brown and very pithy looking, and here we have a nice green succulent vine. This is what you're going to look for. If you cut into part of the vine and it's like this, go ahead and throw that away because that is already dead and it's not going to root. But you can see here, this is nice, healthy, and green. And the other thing that you can kind of look for is these nice large buds here at the nodes. And this one too is a good example. You want to make sure that you've got some nice buds here at the nodes. Now, the other thing that we're going to want to keep track of when we take these cuttings is that we want to make sure that we know which end is up on our cuttings. Now, this is a cutting that I have taken, and you want to make sure that you've got at least 3 and possibly 4 nodes. And the node is right here where the bud is, and you can see here that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 nodes here. And I usually like to take 4 just in case one of these gets injured. We've still got 2 more that will go ahead and leaf out for us. And the way to know which end is up after you've cut them, because they look pretty much the same either way, is to cut the bottom part straight across like this. And you want to go about 1/2 inch below that bud and cut that off. And then the top part, what we're going to do is cut that at an angle. And that way, we know that that is the top of the cutting. So we're going to come down here and take a couple more of these before we start putting them into root. The other thing that you want to do is to make sure that you don't have diseased vines. And so you'll kind of want to check that. And we can also take off any of this extra stuff that we have on the side here, any of the tendrils. Any old leaves that haven't fallen off, anything like that. Now on this one, you can see here out at the end that this is dead, but we can back on up here and probably starting about here, cut this off at an angle above that bud, and then count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come along here and cut below. Now again, which end is up on a grapevine? If you'll notice, we've got some grapes right here that are actually coming down like this, but the top of your cutting is always the end furthest from the main vine. So see, as they come out here, this would be the top of our cutting and this would be the bottom. So just remember that whatever part is furthest away from the main vine, that's the top of your cutting. Now once we've taken our cuttings, then we just need to get them in the media so that they can root. Now what we're putting these cuttings in is just pure peat moss, and we've moistened this ahead of time, and it's very important to moisten this ahead of time. I had a large bucket here and I put my peat moss in, crumbled it up, and then worked the water into it. And peat moss, if you've ever worked water into it, it doesn't take up the water very easily at first, but once it has taken up the water, it holds the water very well. So that's what we've done here. Now we've also got a 5-gallon bucket that we're going to put these in. I also have just a trash bag and then something to tie the trash bag onto the bucket. Now what I'm going to do with my cuttings is I'm going to just stick them into the peat moss, and I want them so that the top is facing down. Basically, we're putting these in here upside down, and what that does is it changes the hormone balance of our cuttings so that they will get roots here at the bottom. And so again, that's the pointy side, so that's the side I want down. And you want to put these in here and take more cuttings than the number of plants that you want, because not all of them will root. So you want to make sure that you got enough of them to get as many plants as you want. And you just set them down here in the peat moss, and you want to have something that's tall enough so that these aren't touching the bottom. And you also don't want to stick your cuttings around the outside of the bucket, because some of the light could get through to the cuttings this way. But if they're all in the center here, we've got a dark area here in the middle, and those will go ahead and root. After you get your cuttings in here, you want to put just a little bit more peat moss to cover the top. And again, these cuttings are really pretty short. On some grapes, they will be very, very long, and you might have to kind of mound your peat moss up over the top. And then we just take a plastic bag or anything that can just keep the moisture in there and keep the light out, and just tie that on. Now, a bungee cord would work great for this. I didn't happen to have one, but that way you could probably get it on and off there a little bit easier. I'm going to use this string. Now you want to set this in a place, preferably a dark place where it won't freeze. The garage, if your garage doesn't freeze during the winter, is a great place. You don't want it to be too warm, but just make sure that it doesn't freeze. And every once in a while, you're going to want to kind of lift that cover off and check your peat moss, make sure that's not drying out on you. Now, we're going to leave these in here for a couple of months. You can check every few weeks and kind of see what the cuttings look like. Now, we did this before several years ago in Oklahoma gardening, and we checked our cuttings in the spring, and we had rooted cuttings. And what you're looking for is a cutting. At first it starts out and the kind of a callus starts growing on the end of the cutting, and then from that the roots initiate. So eventually you will see roots on the end of the cutting. Now, after you see those roots on the end of the cutting, and you've got a good number of roots there, you will take these cuttings out and we'll go ahead and turn them up the other way and put them in pots. Now, a good mix for this is a nice well-drained nursery mix of 3 parts peat moss to 1 part pine bark and 1 part sand. And that's a very nice nursery mix that's well drained. We'll pot those cuttings up, and usually you want to have 2 to 3 of those nodes that we saw sticking out above the top of the pot. We want that bottom one underneath the soil. Water those in and put those in a place where they won't freeze. If it's nice outside and we're not getting freezes, then you can put them outside. Protect them from the wind. You may want to put them in a window instead and water them, and you'll notice that the leaves will start coming out, and you will have a new grapevine to plant out as soon as we pass the frost-free date.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.